I genuinely don't know what possessed me to include so many ruffles on this outfit because they truly are my greatest enemy. Hi, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. I'm Kibikana, a freelance digital illustrator and comic artist, and today we're going to be drawing Elphaba from Wicked because, oh my gosh, I am so excited for the new movie. I haven't seen it yet, but as a longtime fan of the musical, it honestly looks really good. Which is definitely a surprise because I feel like a lot of the movie adaptations of musicals we've gotten recently have been, let's say, lackluster at best. Anyway, I'm going to talk you through my process and hopefully give you some insight on how to create an illustration like the one you saw in the thumbnail on your own. So let's get started. I've been feeling like my artwork has been a little too safe lately. That doesn't mean I'm not happy with it, I am, but I just think that I've gotten really comfortable painting in my current style, and that's a good thing. But I also feel like it means I haven't been taking as many risks recently, so I'm not learning as much. If you ever feel a little bit stuck like I'm describing, I always recommend taking inspiration from another artist. It really helps get you out of your own head and focus on learning something new. So that's what I decided to do for this piece today. I'm sure you've heard of him before, but I'm going to be looking at the work of Alphonse Mucha. If you don't know who he is, he's a very famous artist from the 18 to 1900s. I'm gonna pop some of his work on the screen right now so you can kind of get the energy that we're working with. He was known for his Art Nouveau styled work, so that's what I'm going to be going for today. Also, as a total side note, I've seen a lot of discourse online about how you actually pronounce his name. I've heard Mucha, Mucha, Muka, you name it. I'm pretty sure in the original Czech it's Mucha, but if you're an art historian and you know better than me, let me know in the comments. As usual, I'm starting with grayscale before I jump into color. I'm essentially just nailing down my values at this stage. I talk about this a lot, but it really helps me to have better colors. I actually struggle a lot with color picking and making sure my colors look good and not muddy, and the number one difference for me between having good colors and struggling with them is starting in grayscale. I know it might feel like a lot, maybe like you're adding an extra step and it's going to take longer, but I promise if you get into the habit of it, it's actually going to speed up your workflow, at least it does in my experience, because it actually limits the number of decisions you have to make in the moment. If you're working in color and value at the start, then you have to be making decisions both about color and value, obviously. I feel like sometimes that leaves me feeling overwhelmed and like I have decision fatigue. And breaking it down to two separate steps makes it all feel a lot more manageable. I'm going in now and adding my gradient maps, and I also decided to go with this sort of shiny gold border. I feel like that's pretty common in Art Nouveau illustrations. My end goal is kind of having it look like a tarot card a bit, with a lot of symmetry and repeating patterns. Early on for the background, I was actually referencing this image here, so you'll see a lot of that Art Nouveau repeated pattern in my background now. I ended up feeling like it looked a little too similar to the image and didn't feel like my original work enough, so I end up making a lot of changes to the background later on. When I'm making an original piece like this, I try not to reference any one image too closely and instead use a combination of different photographs, different poses, and pictures I've taken myself, because I don't want it to just be a straight copy of something I've already seen. I definitely want to make a video in the future about ethical usage of reference because I think artists using reference gets demonized a lot, and it's totally normal and something we should all be doing. But there are definitely also rules and expectations about how to interact with reference in good faith, and I think that can sometimes be a little tricky for artists just starting out. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's right or wrong, and things can feel really black and white, so let me know if you're interested in a video on that as well. Now I'm working on Elphaba's face. My goal wasn't to get her to look exactly like Cynthia Erivo because my artwork is still pretty heavily stylized, but I did want to sort of kind of capture her likeness a little bit, so I was looking at a lot of different pictures from different angles of her face and trying to capture at least some of her features. You can let me know if I did a good job or not. I also included a lot of red in her skin tone, which might seem sort of unusual at first, but in areas like her cheeks and her eyelids, blood would actually pool under the skin, and so you would get some of that rosy complexion. You can actually see that they did this on Cynthia Erivo's makeup in the movie. It's not just straight green. They added a lot of blush and warm tones as well to make her skin look a little more natural and lifelike, which I think is just such a lovely detail. At this point, I've started working on her dress. For me, clothing that's white or black is the hardest because it can look really, really dull and desaturated and bland if you're not careful. So you'll see up near her face, I've pulled out a bunch of different colors that are going to be present in other areas of the drawing, and I'm trying to incorporate them into her black clothes so they actually look a little bit more blue and green, and I think that helps just make everything feel a little more lifelike. I also added a sort of rosy color in some of the shadow areas, which again just adds a little bit of visual interest and helps keep things from looking super boring. You will have also just seen me going back in and turning everything into grayscale. I try to do this often throughout my process to check and make sure my values aren't getting lost as I start to add color. If you want to do that yourself, it's really easy. All you have to do is add a layer and fill it in completely with black, put it on top of all of your other layers, and set the layer mode to color. And then you can toggle that on and off to check your values really easily. Alphonse Mucha uses a lot of floral elements in his work, and I'm incorporating that here too. I found a picture of some flowers that I had taken at a garden center to use as reference. As a side note, taking pictures wherever you go is a really good habit as an artist to get into because you never know when you'll need that particular plant or item to use as reference in an illustration, so pretty much always snap pictures. Anyway, I wanted the flowers to be pink as a sort of nod to Glinda, and although they're more of a reddish color, I think that it still works pretty well. It also adds a little bit of variation in the color scheme while still being complementary to all of the greens. I also really liked the mosaic look that was used in this piece by Mucha. I think it looked pretty visually interesting, and I wanted to include it in my piece as well, so that's what I'm doing here. I thought it might add a little bit of variation and visual interest without being overwhelming or taking anything away from the focal point of my piece. Art Nouveau is very detailed and ornate and expensive looking, so you do kind of have to toe this line between making everything super detailed and interesting while still not overpowering the rest of the character and making the image look visually overwhelming. You will have also just seen me clean up the backgrounds. I had the idea to make the repeating patterns a little less geometric, like the reference, and instead sort of mimic the wood on Elphaba's broom. I felt like that helped add quite a bit of originality and a sense of a magical element. I also added a clock detail, which is part of the original Broadway musical, so I definitely wanted to sneak something like that in there. As I continue to finish up this piece, I wanted to take a minute to talk about progressing as an artist. I think it's really easy to get incredibly bogged down in your work and feel frustrated, like you're not where you should be. And I know you've probably heard this before, but it's true that the only person you should be comparing yourself to is your past self. And something about working on this piece really made me think about that. I remember several years ago, I really wanted to do my own deck of tarot cards, and I started with a Fool, and it ended up looking like this. At the time, I felt really frustrated and disappointed. I felt like I would never be a good artist. This drawing of Elphaba is honestly kind of what I had in mind when I originally started drawing that Fool card. I wanted it to look something like this, and I just couldn't get there. And thinking about that, I feel a little conflicted. When first thinking about my drawing today, I really focused on all the things that I wasn't successful at with the piece, the things that took me longer, the things that I struggled with. But looking back on the kind of art that I was making a few years ago, I feel really excited. I think that if I could have seen myself now, I would feel so proud of how much I've accomplished, and that makes me excited for the next few years, to see what I might be able to do then. I say it a lot, but it really is more important to focus on the process rather than the product. That's what's going to keep you drawing and motivated, otherwise you'll never live up to your own expectations. So if you're an artist, don't forget that every day, even if it feels like you're not, you're improving. Anyway, I hope this video was useful, and if you liked it, make sure to comment and subscribe, maybe leave a like. Thank you so much for watching. I post new videos every Monday, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.